Hey, what's up, guys? We're back for another week of the Swampy Coliseum Podcast. I am Andrew Hudson. That's my friend Nathaniel Gilmore. We are just a few weeks away from a national championship
Oh
game.
yeah.
Can you believe the end of the season's almost here?
Man, it feels like the season has gone so fast, but also like because of the 12 team playoff, like we're not even close to the end, it kind of feels like. Like we have
Hmm.
one more week and then we have the championship. Like normally we have how many years ago the championship game would have already been played, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I think of January 8th, actually tonight as we're recording, as I think the Gators might have beaten Ohio State for the national championship on January 8th. So I think of this time right around where
You know,
championship
it's
Monday is,
championship
but
week.
we still have a couple weeks left. So we're excited for that. And of course, sadly for all of us, there are no Florida or USC games this week. We normally start by talking about them, but today we can move forward and let's just go ahead and start talking about these quarterfinal games because there was plenty to
Oh man.
discuss. And we'll start off with the first one. Back on Tuesday night, December 31st, we had Penn State against Boise State in a game that was talked up a lot. Penn State's defense versus the rushing attack of Ashton Genty. What would happen in the end? Penn State really had control a lot of the time. Boise State made it a game there for a little bit, cutting it to 17-14, but Penn State pulled away and just proved to be too much for Boise State to handle, and they got the win 31-14. I mean, how'd you see this one shaking out, Nathaniel?
I mean, I went Boise State. And ended up not really any of the underdogs won this week, which I was kind of banking on someone doing it. But
Yeah.
I mean, Boise State, I think with this game, you can say whatever you want. Penn State looked good in all aspects, but Boise State really showed that they could hang with the big boys. I think the offensive line had one of their worst games. I mean, obviously, it's Penn State. They have a great front seven and they were just loading the box over and over again, forcing Maddox Madsen to throw the ball. And he had some success, but I think if you're Penn State, you live with Maddox Madsen, like trying to win them the game instead of Ashton Genty. Genty had a couple of really good runs, but when you're getting tackled by 4 or 5 guys behind the line of scrimmage, it's hard to do anything. I think the biggest thing, it was kind of funny how like middle of the third quarter, you see half of Penn State's defense just, holding themselves, having to get taken out just because it's tough tackling this dude. Still stand behind. I think he should have won the Heisman. Maybe someone else that we'll talk about later in this show might have
Ooh.
should have won, but I mean, I'm playing, but it was a good game. I mean, obviously they made mistakes at the end, a couple of interceptions, but Penn State, honestly, like I expected them to win this game, but the way that they won it, how they're pretty, physical, very dominant, and they didn't really kind of let anything go was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and the biggest fault for Boise State in this game was not being able to finish because they were able to drive down the field
Oh
and they had over 400 yards of total offense. They were moving the ball pretty consistently. They converted half of their third downs, but it was not being able to convert in the red zone, not getting into the end zone, not making field goals, and that's what did them in the end. Penn State was able to put enough plays together to get the victory. So it was a crazy game of penalties, 23 total
oh my
penalties,
gosh.
which
Oh
was
my gosh.
annoying to see. Um, but I mean, thankfully it was a game for a bit.
Yeah.
It was closer maybe than the first round games were, certainly. But Penn State, of course, pulled away in the end, was able to win by 17 points, moving them on to the Final Four, and we'll move on as well to the next game, which I did not see coming at all. Ohio State trounced Oregon 41-21, going up 34 nothing before Oregon was able to put points on the board. This was crazy to see. I was not expecting it. Of course, Ohio State has all the talent in the world, but they actually showed it last week. I mean, they showed their strength in this game.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought just throw Jeremiah Smith the ball and see what happens? Who would have thought?
Could you
I
imagine?
think I think that Michigan game was probably, albeit it was a loss. And Ohio State's lucky this is, the first year of the 12 team playoff. But I think they really reflected, especially on that week where they missed the Big Ten championship game. And they can't out physical teams like they wanted to prove. That's what they tried to do against Michigan. They tried running the ball. They tried to be just hard nosed football. We're going to beat Michigan, how Michigan's beaten us all these years. That's kind of how they played against a couple other teams this year. The first game against Oregon, they had a lot of elements of that where Jeremiah Smith didn't get the ball a lot. And then I think once they kind of saw that, they're like, all right, if we can't do this, we still have a shot. And they showed that against Tennessee. And then this game, they're like, all right, let's just get the ball to our playmakers. Let's get it out to Jeremiah. They dumped it off to Jeremiah Smith on that first pass, and he just took it. And anytime, I mean, Smith said it before the game, anytime it was one-on-one, they're taking a shot. And that's exactly what they did. And once the Oregon defense started to lay off, they started running the ball with just all these holes. Yeah, Henderson and Judkins just got free so many times. I think Oregon played a better game than the score said, but it's the fact that they just got blitzed out the gate.
Yeah.
They, if Oregon got maybe one stop in that span, this game could have been different because they were on their back foot for pretty much the entire first half. And then once they settled in, that's when it became more of a competitive game. But yeah, did not. I thought Ohio State would win. I didn't think it'd be like this.
Well, and you look at the drives for Oregon in the first half, three and out, three and out, 7 plays, but then a punt, 7 plays, turnover on downs, three and out, three and out. And they finally got a touchdown to end the half. Meanwhile, Ohio State's going touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, touchdown, field goal. I mean, like you said, the blitzkrieg was on. And from there just wasn't a chance in the second half, being down by 26 points. Ohio State, with their defense, was able to pretty much cruise in from that point on. So, yeah, wild game. I actually was out a bit, wasn't able to just sit down and watch it. Pulled it up on my phone and saw the score in the first half, and I was stunned. So big blowout there against the number one team in the country. I mean, this was a lot of people's national champion. This was our national champion.
Yeah.
The team that's been undefeated all year. Obviously, they had a huge showdown earlier in the season against Ohio State and was able to win 32-31. This was just a totally different game. And this could be the beginning of Ryan Day being able to get those wins in big games that
Yeah.
have been eluding him so much. Of course, Michigan has had their number. He's had huge moments in the playoffs that have not worked out, like with CJ Stroud against Georgia just a few years ago. He this is his chance. I mean, he just beat the number one team in the country. They've got 2 more games to cement the legacy to win the championship. They're the favorite from here on out. So Ohio State has a lot to live up to now that they're in this position, but I think they can do it. So
Yeah.
huge one there. Now maybe it's got to be the best game of the quarterfinals. Didn't seem like it for a while, but Texas Arizona State ended in overtime. Texas winning the game 39-31 with a touchdown and 2 point conversion there in second overtime. Man, this was such an interesting game because both offenses were going back and forth, moving it down the field pretty well, but there was just a halt on scoring. Neither team could get it in the end zone. Teams were missing field goals. I, okay, Burt Auburn is better than what he showed, but he was just totally off. The Arizona State kicker, bad,
He's
bad.
been bad.
He's been bad. They shouldn't have trusted him from the beginning. Anyways, but there were moments there for Arizona State. Even with that being said, he missed that first field goal, and I think their idea from that point on was we're going for it. Like
Yeah.
we're here for a reason. We're gonna go down swinging. We're gonna go. But there were a few moments where if they would have taken the 3 points, if they would have settled instead of failing on fourth down again, it would have made them that much closer. Where, of course, they were able to tie it at the end of the game by a miracle and force overtime. But man, if they would have taken one or two of those chances to add a field goal when they could have, this could have been a different story.
Yeah, I think I was just looking it up. They were 3 of 6 on fourth down. Two of them were close. One of them was literally from the 34. It was 4th and 10 or something like that. It's something where Arizona State literally had to have kicking tryouts earlier this year just because they didn't trust their kicker whatsoever. And I mean, they went the complete opposite route of what Indiana did at the beginning of these playoffs, where scared money don't make money. They saw like, hey, this is our shot. We have a shot at the SEC champ or SEC runner ups. A team that we're supposed to lose by double digits to. We better not miss it. And I respect it. Who knows? Just like Burt Auburn, who doesn't miss field goals, went 1 for 3. Who would have said, if they missed those 3 field goals or, who knows? And it's really hard playing what if. I mean, Arizona State can play what if, there was that
Yeah.
huge targeting call at the end of the game.
Oh,
That, I don't know. I think my opinion as an athletic trainer, where we get just grounded and just pumped information about, we're supposed to be handling all the concussions, everything about head trauma, and seeing that. And it was a bad look because the guy literally, that was a targeting. That is what we're supposed to be preventing because of a concussion or, spinal cord injuries. And the kid, who knows what happens, whether it was a concussion, whether it was a spinal cord injury, immediately fell to the ground. And it's a bad look. Obviously, you don't want to kick a kid out that close to the end of the game. You don't want to change, you don't want to change the game that late. But
right.
if that's penalty, and if you're doing that for the safety of the athletes, nothing else should matter. And I think they dropped the ball there. I think there should be changes to the targeting rule soon, where maybe there's not an ejection every time if there's not intent, something like that. But overall, I mentioned this earlier, Cam Scattaboo, stingers up, been riding with him all year. If I picked them to win, maybe they would have won. I was debating between them and Boise State.
Yep.
I ended up going with Boise, but man, Scattaboo, I think he had more yards than Texas did in the fourth quarter before Texas came back and got got that touchdown. He looked great on the ground. He had a 42-yard touchdown pass. He had that big catch. Honestly, probably was offensive pass interference. Who
Yes.
knows?
Yes.
That the arm got extended a bit, but
They called defensive on that one.
Yeah, it was weird.
I couldn't believe it.
Hey, he's not a wide receiver. He didn't know where the ball was falling. He was just trying to track it,
He's also not a marathon runner because he had plenty of times where he was gassed on the sideline. He couldn't get his breath. He was so tired.
My unprofessional opinion, not coming from an athletic trainer, not really, but I think he might have had a little bit of a concussion. Who knows? Who knows? But
Mm,
he was pounding that head a bit, shaking it. Looks like he had a little stars in his eyes. He
mm.
was puking throughout. Couple telltale signs, but man, he had one heck of a game. I think he looked gassed, but every time he went back in for short yardage, and he got what needed to be done. He got a couple of those 2 yard plays where he just put his foot down and he said, "You can't take me down." One of the plays probably should have been called back, where his offensive lineman kind of carried him into the end zone. But you know what? We love it. We love a fairy tale ending. It was close. But yeah, I will say though, Texas, my Heisman Trophy winner, Quinn Ewers, he's the reason they won that game. So
Mm. Yeah, that fourth down and 13 is gonna
oh,
haunt Arizona State. I mean, they scored a touchdown. They are there on defense. They just need to stop. That's it.
fourth
And
and
they get it to a 4th and 8. And then Texas has the audacity of getting a false start, moving it back
yeah,
to a 4th and 13, and they leave Matthew Golden wide open, streaking into the end zone. Touchdown. Of course, Texas then, on their first play, scores a touchdown of the next overtime. It gets a 2-point conversion. They end up winning then because Arizona State was not able to score. And that was it.
yeah.
And that fourth down was huge. The non-targeting call, as you mentioned, was huge for Arizona State, but they had plenty of opportunities. But talking about how the game started for them, they had a nice drive going down the field. They made a field goal to go up 3-0. Then they had a punt return for a touchdown. Then they punted. Then they drove down the field. They had themselves fourth down at the 25-yard line, maybe a 42-yard field goal. They go for it. Cam Scadaboo doesn't get it, gets up. His tight end is helping him up, and he shoves his tight end because he's mad about the blocking. The character of Scadaboo, I don't know that I'm high on if I'm a scout looking at him, but you can't deny the talent. But anyway, they turn over on downs. They go back the next drive. They turn it over on downs again. And then to end the half, they drive all the way down the field. They get themselves a 36-yard field goal attempt, and it's blocked. And at this point, they go into overtime down 17-3, feeling like they don't have much hope. But oh, they stop Texas on their first drive of the third quarter. They drive all the way down to the 2-yard line. Then on 3rd and 2 from the 2, Sam Levitt keeps it. He runs the ball. Terrible decision. He weighs like 170 pounds. He's not getting through there. Then, of course, they give it to Scatterboo, and he doesn't make it on 4th and goal. And so another empty possession. But amazingly, they were able to get themselves back in the game. Obviously, the safety on the next play, and they were able to, as you mentioned, have those crazy plays in the fourth quarter to get him back in it. But I'm glad they made it a game because it was entertaining to watch
Oh,
for
so fun.
sure. So fun, the best game of the quarterfinals. But Texas takes it. They move on to the Final Four, and they have a big game coming up. But we'll talk about the last game of the quarterfinals. Notre Dame beating number 2 Georgia 23-10 after the terrible tragedy and terrorist attacks there in New Orleans on Bourbon Street. So many prayers going up to everyone involved there from the awful happenings there, and the people who died and were injured. We're praying for their families and everything going on there in New Orleans. But the game itself, as it was postponed to be a day later, um, was good for the most part. Started off slow, but it was that streak of scoring for Notre Dame that opened the game up. and basically sealed it for them there between the end of the first half to the beginning of the second half. And that was mostly the story of the game. Gunnar Stockton played well for the most part, but um, similar to how we were talking before, talking about some of those games of not being able to finish when you get into the red zone. That's what was happening with Georgia as well as Notre Dame's defense stood up and got them the win.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Michigan last year playing old school football. Well, Notre Dame is even older school. Like, take back the clock. Riley Leonard, he can chuck it a little bit, but he ran it a lot more. I think he had 80 yards rushing, 90 yards passing. I mean, it was just one of those things where Notre Dame was going to suffocate Georgia and their young quarterback's offense, and their defense is going to play. Their offense is going to hold possession. They're going to run the ball a lot. And once Georgia made a mistake, they're going to capitalize. And Notre Dame on their end, they weren't going to make mistakes. And honestly, that one drive where Georgia scored their touchdown, there was a lot of mistakes. And that was kind of the only kind of glimmer of hope Georgia had. There was a lot of busts on in the coverage. They left a lot of guys wide open, gave them hope. But what happened the next drive? Georgia turns it over on downs, and Notre Dame shuts them down from there. I mean, it's kind of how Notre Dame's been winning games all year, where defense holds them, offense runs the ball until points just magically appear on the board. And yeah, this is going to be a hard team to beat just because of that defense and just how complementary they play. It's hard to beat a team if you're not on the field on offense and your defense is just getting ground down because they have 3, 4 running backs. Jeremiah Love's going to be back for the next round. I heard he only had a couple carries in this game, but
Mm.
they have 3 running backs plus a quarterback that will run, and they're not small guys. These are bruisers that will make your defense pay. Even if you tackle them, you're going to be hurting. So it's going to be interesting. Interesting matchup going on, and this is a team where they can very well win it all.
I agree. And think about being there on the sideline. You're there for Georgia. Arian Smith catches a ball down the sideline, runs for 67 yards, and then a referee runs into you. You get a 15-yard penalty. Can you imagine the
And
thoughts going through that guy's head?
he
It,
wasn't
it,
supposed to be there.
he wasn't supposed to be there. If you didn't see it, huge play down the sideline, 67-yard completion to Arian Smith for Georgia, and a a player who's not suited up on their sideline was in the white out of bounds, and the ran into him, gave him a 15-yard penalty. I mean, that's got to feel like the worst thing that you could possibly do standing there on the sideline.
Yeah, from experience, yeah, when I was working football, that's one thing where it's kind of one of your jobs, even though it's not my official job. My official job is to look out for the health and safety, but an unofficial job is keep everyone away from that white line.
Hmm.
There's another white line right behind it. That's where they're supposed to be behind. You keep guys behind there. That little sliver behind the big white line is where all the coaches go. No player should be there, but players trickle up, but you're like, all right, this is where the refs are running. Just let him go. But he was on the edge. It's not like he was in the middle of it. He was kind of on that edge where, he's just celebrating, being happy, but the ref wasn't looking. He started drifting left. And, if he runs by, no touch, the penalty's not getting called. But it's just contact is made. That has to be called.
Starting the big thing there, or really for the second half of the game. Georgia finally drove and got a touchdown and made it 20-10. But starting with 9:22 on the clock in the third quarter, Georgia only had three more drives the rest of the game, and each of them ended with a turnover on downs. And they just weren't able to get anything going offensively, or at least finish when they were in a good spot. But one of the biggest moments of the game, late, of course, they had barely a chance still to be able to get the victory, but they forced a fourth down. Notre Dame they had their offense on the field at their own 19-yard line. There is no way in the world that they are going for this fourth down. There was only a few minutes left in the game. They are just trying to get you to jump off sides. Well, they run the offense off the field. Or sorry, they have the punters on the field. They run the punter off, everyone, all 11 players off the field. They run the offense on. You cannot jump in that scenario. There is no shot. But they do a hard count. Georgia jumps off sides, gives them a first down. They're able to run a lot more time off the clock. And I mean, that was something that really sealed it for Notre Dame. It was a great coaching job on their part, but the lack of discipline on Georgia's part did them in, which, this hasn't been the Georgia team that we've seen over previous years. And it showed itself right there. So now, 2 years straight of Georgia not winning a championship. They're losing Carson Beck, most likely moving on to Gunnar Stockton for next year, but we'll see what they do in the portal or anything that might change. So yeah, not sure what we're going to see from Georgia, but I was very impressed by Notre Dame. I think they're a great team with a great defense, and they definitely have a chance at this championship. So, man, what good games in the quarterfinals. And that leads us to where we're at now with a Penn State, Notre Dame, and then Ohio State, Texas semifinals, which, I mean, these are about as blue bloods get. These teams are classic brands, great matchups, and I'm excited to see what happens overall. So, hey, let's take a chance now to talk about our picks. Let's review our brackets real fast, how we picked what we thought would happen in this playoff bracket, the 12 team for the first time. So, how's yours looking? What happened for you, Nathaniel?
Yeah, so Texas, Arizona State, I actually had it, Arizona State, Clemson. I had Arizona State winning in our kind of revised vision. Obviously, since Clemson didn't even make it, I had Texas moving on, which ended up happening. Yeah, which Arizona State, I was crossing that fingers. They got close. Next, we both had Oregon going all the way,
Yeah,
but you know Ohio State ended up winning. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I picked them to win. But that's for later. That's for later. So yeah, both of our champions are out. Then I did have Penn State, Boise State, have Boise State moving on, which did not happen. Close game ish until the end. And then Notre Dame, Georgia, I just thought, even since, the brackets came out, that Notre Dame would just be too much, especially without, Carson Beck on the other side and was correct. Not stood corrected because that means I would have been wrong, but I was
that's
correct.
right. Very true. Yeah, mine looks similar in some ways, but I had Clemson playing Arizona State in that quarterfinal with Arizona State advancing. Of course, Texas was able to win that game. Along with that, I had Tennessee beating Ohio State, which, whew, that was a blowout. But Ohio State obviously was able to advance past Oregon. Both those games, I had the team who's in the semifinal not even going past the first round. So good job there. Then I had Penn State moving on, beating Boise State there. but I was wrong about Georgia and Notre Dame as well. I just thought Georgia was going to be able to put something together to stop Notre Dame and just do enough. And with that, my championship game was Oregon, Georgia, and both those teams are now eliminated. So my bracket is shot. Now I'm just looking forward to watching some good games and picking them from here. And we can't be upset with these matchups
Yeah.
that we have. But I will say with the teams that we're looking at, these are four teams with Drew Aller, Riley Leonard, Will Howard, and Quinn Ewers, who now I'm not overall the biggest guy on college quarterbacks in the first place, but these are four college quarterbacks this year I have panned all season. I have said they're not really that good. They will fail in the end. They won't be able to do enough to get the victory. I think I do stand corrected. Hold on, let me. I stand corrected.
Correct.
And here's the thing. I think this is the biggest point for me. I need to do a better job of separating good college quarterback with good NFL quarterback because I project these guys to the next level and I don't see much for them there. And my mind gets stuck on that. But they do enough to be a really good college quarterback and get their team where they need to go. So they've all obviously gotten to this point. One of them is going to win a national championship, and they'll always have that on their resume. So really good matchups. We'll talk more about those in a minute, but let's switch gears and go to our trivia question. I've got one lined up for Nathaniel, and really, I have three lined
Oh,
up for
okay, okay.
Nathaniel. But we're going to go through them fairly quick because you, as my Trojan brother, fight
Oh
on.
no. Oh no.
You love your Trojans, but I need to know your Trojan history right now. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna ask you three
Yeah.
questions. I need the top five career leaders
Oh
for
gosh.
USC in rushing, receiving, and passing yards.
Gosh.
So we're gonna start with rushing. I'm gonna see what you can do here. Top
Okay.
five leading rushers in USC history.
Okay. Like career, right?
Career, not one season, career.
All right. All right. Give me OJ Simpson.
OJ Simpson is number nine.
No shot. Okay. Okay. Let's lock in.
Yes.
Let's lock in. Let's lock in. Marcus Allen.
Marcus Allen's number two, 4,600 career yards.
All right. Anthony Davis.
Anthony
No.
Davis, number
Yeah.
five. Yes, 3,400 yards.
Sam Bam coming Cunningham isn't on there, huh? He's what, like seven or something?
Sam Cunningham.
Is he
Sam
not,
Cunningham? I don't see him on the
not even
list.
on there? Hey, you know what? He did something even greater than being on the top five list. He integrated football in Alabama. Um,
That's what I'm talking about. He's 32 on the list. He didn't have as many career yards.
Jeez. It's just new guys like Reggie Bush. He's not going to be on there because he split carries. Lindell White's not going to be on there because he split carries.
I will tell you, Reggie Bush and Lindell White are 7 and 8. And
Oh
if you
man.
didn't know, they only had 10 yards different from each other. Reggie Bush 31.69, Lindell White 31.59. That's crazy.
Reggie Bush, he had the receiving.
Yeah.
He had less carries. It was just really, it was a thunder and lightning thing where, Lindell White got you 3, 4 yards just right up the middle, maybe broke it out for a big one. And then Reggie Bush, Fresno State knows. Just look up those highlights. Oh
Yikes.
gosh. Um, oh gosh. Okay. Now it's time to lock in. Ricky, what's his last name? It's Ricky something. I don't want to say Ricky Williams, but I want to say Ricky Davis, but that's not a person.
Mm. Maybe
Um,
Ricky ring that
oh, Ricky Bell. It was Ricky Bell. I don't know why I
Ricky
was
Bell.
thinking Ricky Bell was like I was thinking Mike Bell, or no, maybe Mike Hart. I don't know. Some Saints running back, but yeah, Ricky
Well,
Bell.
Ricky Bell, number 4 on the list, 3,500 career yards. We're only missing number 1 and number 3.
Number one and number three. No one from the 2000s, huh?
2010s.
It's not Vai Malapai, right?
No.
Ronald Jones Jr.
Ronald Jones, number 3 overall.
Yeah, who would have thought?
3,600 yards, who I know for the Buccaneers, and I could have never told you that he played at USC. I did not know that.
Oh, he was so good. He had a string from 2016 to mid 2017 where he had 100 yards in every game.
Yeah, that's
But like
crazy.
we kind of don't remember the Penn State game because that one was right in the middle of that streak and he didn't get 100 yards. But he wore number 4 to honor Joe McKnight. So it made it all okay. And he had a
There you
touchdown.
go.
And we won, so it didn't really matter.
Well, hey, we'll
Okay,
go
number
on.
one.
Winning number 1, 5,600 yards in his career.
I mean, obviously he was a Heisman winner. Who am I forgetting? Mike something, right?
No?
No? 1960s?
70s, 76 to 79.
Gosh. Oh gosh. Anything before I was born is just such a jumbled mess. And I mean, obviously he was a Heisman winner. What was the first letter of his first name?
C.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. First, what was his first name?
CW. CW.
Oh, it's his initials. Oh,
Yep.
Caleb Williams. Come on.
There
Charles Charles Woodson. Charles was it Williams?
Charles White.
Oh my gosh. Charles White. Yeah, that's him. Wow.
Yes.
I'm actually really embarrassed. I should not have forgotten that.
Charles White, Heisman Trophy winner, 5,600 career yards.
I
Amazing
knew that.
career way back in the
I knew that.
70s.
I knew
But
that.
that's okay. We'll move on. We got 2 more categories to do. So we'll go forward. Hey, let's talk receiving. Okay, I need top 5 receivers in USC
Okay.
history.
Give me Dwayne Jarrett.
Dwayne Jarrett, number 2, 3,100 yards.
I want to say Mike Williams, but Mike Williams was only there 2 years because he left early and then he had to miss out on the NFL for like a year or two.
Hmm.
Give me Keyshawn Johnson.
Keyshawn is not there. Also, only 2 years.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Steve Smith, he played a
Steve
lot.
Smith, number 5. Number
Yeah.
5, 3,000 yards.
Give me okay, now we're just looking mid 2010s. We have Bolitnikoff winner Marquise Lee.
Marquise Lee, number 1 overall. A Jaguar great with 3,600 career yards.
He had it was like the first play of the year. This was 2013, I want to say. Matt Barkley. We had TJ McDonald on the other end. We were wearing our new Nike red and yellow socks. We're playing Syracuse at home. They run a screenplay, which I was 12, 11 at the time. Never really seen a wide receiver screen ever in my life. Marquise Lee screen pass, 75 yards. See ya. I thought we were going to win the national championship, but we ended up losing to Georgia Tech in the Sun Bowl. So,
Oh, what a turn of events.
what a turn.
Yikes. Well, hey,
Okay.
that leaves us with 2 more, number 3 and number 4. One from the mid 2010s and one from right about the turn of the century.
So the 2010s, that would have been, I'm going to go with Juju.
Yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster, almost 3,100 career yards.
Absolute dog. And then turn of the century, we're talking like early 2000s.
So right about 99 to 02.
Oh my gosh. O two. Who was in O two? The only one I can think of in O two was Mike Williams.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mike was number 11. Like you mentioned before, he wasn't quite there. This
Who
is
was
initials.
Carson
Initial,
Palmer slinging it to?
initials KK.
Oh, Kareem Kelly.
There you go,
What a dog.
Kareem
I no,
Kelly.
he was one of the nastiest wide receivers you'll see out there. I remember
Mm.
watching those games because I was barely functioning as a human being when they were playing, but we had like old recordings and I'd be watching those games and man, that 2003 team, or I guess 2002, 2003 team was special. Kareem Kelly, nasty, kind of surprised he never really made it in the NFL.
Yeah, crazy. But all right, I know you got this. Passing yards
Gosh.
leaders, top
Okay,
five USC.
these are
Let's
all
get it.
2000s, so I should run through. I'm like really mad at myself for not remembering Charles White. Like it's still eating at me right now.
I
I think I'm
understand.
not going to sleep tonight because of that.
That's
Um,
fair.
okay, you know what? Let's see if, okay, I was going to say, let's see if we can do it in order, but that's not happening. Okay, let's go. Oh man, is Cody Kessler on that list?
Cody Kessler's number 4.
Yeah, what a guy.
Yes,
What a guy. Didn't really get a shot in the
10,300
NFL.
yards.
He was
Oh,
on.
he had a
Yeah,
little bit of a shot, of course, with Jacksonville.
yeah, exactly. I will say there was a time where he was the quarterback for the Browns, and it was him, Deshaun Kaiser, and Kevin Hogan. And he was the best out of the three. But since he couldn't throw it past like 20 yards, they just gave
Oh,
it to Hogan, who all he did was chucked it. Then Cody Kessler, who had like a 70% completion percentage, just got tossed to the side. Who cared about him? Okay.
yikes.
Cody Kessler was 4. Give me Heisman winner, Carson Palmer.
Carson Palmer, number 2 overall with 11,300 yards.
Give me Heisman winner, Matt Leinart.
Matt Leinart, number 3, 10,000, almost 700 yards.
So what? I have 2, 3, 4 right now.
You have 2, 3, 4. We're looking for number 1 and number 5.
Matt Barkley is going to be one of those.
Matt Barkley is number 1 overall, 12,300 career yards. Also, on top of that, 116 touchdowns. This guy was slinging it around the field.
Matt Barkley, I will never forget the day where UCLA ruined his career.
Mhm.
This was also the infamous Georgia Tech loss in the Sun Bowl year. It was last game of the season. Matt Barkley came back for one more year. This was supposed to be it because we beat Ohio State the year before in the regular season, but we didn't go to a bowl game, even though we had one loss because of sanctions. And then this year, sanctions were over. We're supposed to win it all. And then Barkley gets hurt in the last game. He broke his collarbone because Anthony Barr had some crazy hit that was probably illegal. And they started dancing over him while he was writhing in pain. I was,
Mm,
I think I was on vacation. I was on vacation somewhere because it was around Thanksgiving. Sad times for the Gilmore household. But
yikes.
yeah, career never the same. Yeah, he was an absolute beast all 4 years he played. Beat Ohio State in the big house his freshman year. Never forget. All right. So we have one more, number 5.
Number 5.
So right now I'm thinking in my headspace, thinking Caleb Williams, but he only was there 2 years. We didn't really air it out before the turn of the century. Norm Chow really revolutionized the USC offense. But it wasn't like a John David Booty. Mark Sanchez only played like what 1 or 2 years, so it couldn't be him. Um, can't be like Slovis. Darnold played 2 years, but I would bet that Caleb Williams had more yards than Darnold. So I'm gonna guess Caleb Williams, and if it's not him, it's probably someone from before the 2000s. So is it Caleb Williams?
You know, you didn't mention Todd
I
Marinovich,
was gonna say, oh, that was the guy I was gonna
but
pick if it wasn't one of those two.
the correct answer is Caleb Williams.
Okay, I was literally in my head. I was like, if it's not Caleb, it's not going to be then. So it'll be the 1900s, and the only quarterback that we really had besides John McKay's son, J.K. McKay, was Todd Marinovich.
Oh,
Okay,
funny. No,
it was
hey, you got those 5 for 5. That was very good. And you were mentioning a lot of other guys right around that top 10 area. So, yeah, nice job. A little walk down memory lane, and I love hearing the stories. Oh, you got so many anecdotes of your times watching USC over the years. So, hey, when we don't have any UF or USC football to talk about, we've got to bring it out some other way. So,
yeah.
so thanks for listening to our stories. That was good. You did a good job on that, pulling those guys out. So
Except for Charles White. I will not sleep tonight because I forgot about Charles White.
that's okay. You'll have to make it up to us in the future. But let's go forward as we have just 3 games left in the season. So leading into these semifinals, we want to give you what we think are some keys to victory for each of the teams in these semifinal games. So we're going to start it off with the Penn State Notre Dame game. And Nathaniel, for you, looking at this Penn State team, what would you say is the biggest key for them being able to win this game against Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame, it's if you want to beat Notre Dame, you have to figure out their defense because their offense, yeah, they can score a lot, but if they get it into their game, they're going to just put up enough points to win. So your offense is going to have to figure something out. Penn State's been relying on their defense throughout the year. The only times where it has failed them, obviously, Ohio State, and then finally Oregon, which they scored 37, but let up 45. So defense, who knows? It could be good, could be bad. I think this is all going to rest on the offense. And their running game, Katron Allen, they're going to have to split it up between him and Singleton, and they're going to get their yards, but not to be every single, sports pundit out there, but they're going to have to put a lot of pressure and a lot of weight onto their quarterback, Drew Aller, who knows if he's going to the draft this year, but he's going to have to play one heck of a game. I mean, he played pretty well against Boise State. He played well against SMU, but the pressure wasn't really on him at all. He just made plays when he needed to, and it ended up making the difference. But this is going to be a different beast. Notre Dame, they have really small lanes. I think you're really able to beat them over the top. So if you want to beat them, Aller's going to have to put the ball where it needs to be deep. And he's going to have to thread a lot of needles. And, if Notre Dame's not respecting the pass, Katron Allen, who's been amazing all year long, Nick Singleton, who was one of the best running backs last year, is still there. If they just put 7 in the box and man up the rest of the way, Penn State isn't winning this game. So Drew Aller, he's going to need to put the ball on the money, and he's going to have to make really good decisions and keep drives going if they want to win this game, if they want to win the national championship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. On the flip side, looking at Notre Dame, they need to control the game. And we talked about Boise State previously in their last game against Penn State. They were able to move the ball up and down the field. We mentioned over 400 yards of offense, but it was getting things done in the red zone. And that's going to be a huge key for Notre Dame. Getting that running attack consistently in action and having Jeremiah Love healthy is going to be a huge key. They were able to get away with it last game, but they're going to need him to really show up and show out against Penn State. So I think their defense, Notre Dame's defense, is going to be able to do enough because their defense is stellar. Looking at their defensive backs with Jordan Clark, Xavier Watts, their front seven is just road grading people. I think they're going to be able to hold Penn State to a low enough score, maybe in the teens, to where I think if Notre Dame scores 20 points, they're going to win this game. So it'll be up to Riley Leonard keeping things under control, being able to drive the ball down the field and finish in the red zone to really seal up this game for Notre Dame. I think they can do it. That's going to be a big one. That feels like it should be played in a mud pit, you know, no hardly any passing, just run the ball up the middle and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's what it feels like there. But that's going to be a really fun game to watch. And of course, our other game that we have, the other semifinal, Ohio State against Texas. And for me, when it comes to Ohio State, we saw their firepower on display against Oregon. They came out hot, they hit huge plays, they built up a, a good lead. The thing is, this Texas defense is really strong in the secondary. They have Jahdae Barron, who was the Thorpe Award winner. They have been really strong on the defensive end. And a lot of times where Texas has stalled on offense, but their defense has kept them in the game. They even had a punt return touchdown against Arizona State to give them more scoring. For Ohio State, a big thing will be for them defensively stopping the run. I've talked about this in previous episodes about Texas, but in games where they don't run the ball well, they often don't win. That's where you really see them falter. Last game against Arizona State was a bit of a misnomer. They didn't run that well, but they still ended up winning at the end, even though they almost cost it a few times. But for Ohio State, if they're able to stop the run of Texas, I think that will cause Quinn Ewers to make more mistakes, and Ohio State will be able to get the win. That'll be a huge thing for them. I think their offense is going to be able to do enough with all of their talent on the field, but that defense getting big stops will be a huge thing for Ohio State. What do you think about Texas?
Yeah, Texas. I mean, kind of what you're talking about. Texas, the last few games, Ewers hasn't had, a great season. He was my, Heisman pick. He had a run of okay games to start the season. He got hurt, came back to beat Oklahoma, but struggled against Georgia. Then had so games throughout the year. Had a big one, had big stats against the second time against Georgia, but still ended up in a loss. And then if you look, at their rushing game, that's been the one to win them a lot of games, especially that Oklahoma game. Uh, did really well against Kentucky, did really well against Texas A&M. But the running game's been off, and Ewers has picked it up to end the year. I mean, he started off really hot against Clemson. I think he started off 7 for 7. He was just rifling it against Arizona State, had a great game. And I think if Texas wants to beat Ohio State, just looking at Ohio State and what they've been doing recently, their defense needs to be on point. Their defense was, the big part of their team for most of this year. They did, besides games against Georgia the first time, Vanderbilt did a little something. But besides that, in the regular season, their defense played really well. And then Clemson had a couple touchdowns, made it close. Arizona State did some things, made it close. So if, Texas has to get back to that dominant defense, keep it at least lower scoring to keep them in the game. Texas has a weird them and Clemson just have weird times where they start off well and then they just have cold spots throughout the year. And it was interesting a couple weeks ago wondering, okay, how's this going to play out against Clemson? Because they both, disappear. Their offenses disappear in the second and third quarter. And ironically, both teams really disappeared in the middle of that game. But the defense is going to have to keep the offense in the game for them to win this game. I mean, they're going to have to hold Jeremiah Smith. They can't let him break records. They can't let him have 2 touchdowns. And Quinn Ewers is going to play his game. We'll see if the running game is on point this week. But Texas can score points. They just need to be in the game at the end of the game to get the win. So Texas's defense doesn't play up to their potential. They don't have a shot.
Yeah, I like all those points. And an interesting thing we haven't pointed out until now the seeds of these teams. We've got 5, 6, 7, and 8 going against each other. The top four teams, all the teams with byes, lost last week
Crazy.
in their games. What does that say? Is it a rest versus rust thing? It goes back to the maybe the wrong teams getting byes, as we mentioned with Arizona State and Boise State, but still crazy to see the top four teams all out of it. The next four are our final four, and I think it'll be really great matchups in the end. So we have our picks. It is time for each of us to make our picks. Remember, this is separate from our bracket. Those are shot. Those are pretty much done. We're gonna pick right now.
I still have Notre Dame. Who
You
knows?
do. You
Oh wait,
do
no.
still
Who did I
have.
have? Yeah, to even make it, I had Oregon losing, but I mean winning.
Yeah. Yeah, we both have our champion gone, but let's just go ahead and pick these games. As first up, we have Notre Dame and Penn State going against each other in the Capital One Orange Bowl. Notre Dame is a 1.5 point favorite in this game. And Nathaniel, you have the first pick.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I think Penn State has played a lot better than I would think. I thought the Boise State game would be a lot closer. I thought the SMU game would be a lot closer. To the point where I was, on the fence about SMU, being able to pull that off. But Penn State, to their credit, they have beaten teams that they're supposed to beat all year long, the entire James Franklin era. The only thing you can't really say, say whatever you want about him winning big games, say whatever you want about him not being able to beat Ohio State or Michigan. But in every single game that they were supposed to win, besides the 2017 Rose Bowl where they lost to USC, they have won that game. So they've done a great job. And Notre Dame, ever since that NIU loss, they've just been on fire. They figured out who they are. Kind of thinking back to that NIU game, you can't really pull anything from that because what Notre Dame was doing was putting so much weight on Riley Leonard and him being able to make passes that, maybe were outside of his ability to start the year. He wasn't in rhythm. They were trying to force him to make plays, and it wasn't happening. And they've kind of figured out the style of play they want to play, and they've done a really good job at playing that the rest of the year. And I think with those factors combined, I think Notre Dame's going to take this. Penn State's technically not supposed to win this game, so I don't think they're going to. So, I mean, I think it'll be a really close game. I think Penn State's defense is going to keep it really close, but Notre Dame is just going to, that machine is going to continue to roll right into the national championship game.
I I have to say that I agree with that pick. This Notre Dame defense, being able to watch them in the past few weeks, they're stellar. The way that they fly around the field, the way they hit. I've talked a lot about their defensive backfield and not just making plays in the pass game, but coming up in the running game as well. And their offense is doing whatever they need to do to get the win. Riley Leonard talked in the post game last game saying, "Hey, we weren't getting anything going passing the ball, so I had to run it, and we did whatever we could do." Basically, was how he was putting it. I'll do whatever I gotta do to be able to get this win. So I like their chances against Penn State. Just being able to do enough more to score more points, and I think put Drew Aller in some tough situations. So I'm going with Notre Dame as well. And remember, folks, Nathaniel and I are still tied after all this year. We are knotted up 50 to 34 apiece. As last week, each of us went 3-1. So we're still knotted up with only 3 games left in the season. And we just picked the first game the same. So we'll see what goes on. And if we end up tying for the rest of the season, if one of us wins, but
We'll have to make some type of a tiebreaker or something.
Yeah. Yeah, there will have to be maybe whoever picked more upsets correctly.
Cool. Then we'd have to define upsets, and we'll figure it out. I guess we could just say who went against the spread or something like that.
Exactly.
But
Exactly. So, anyway, that's a little side story that we're really excited about. But last game, of course, Ohio State playing Texas. Ohio State is a 5.5 point favorite, but a big key in this game is it's at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Basically, a home game for Texas, even though the stands won't quite look like that, but they certainly could have an advantage being so close to home. With that, Ohio State is the favorite in the game. And we just came off of seeing them totally destroy Tennessee 42-10. Then they came out and wiped Oregon out, going up 34 to nothing and winning that game easily. They, over the past couple of games, have looked like the best team in the country. And it's hard for us to go against that. Texas has done what they have needed to do. They got their way into the playoff. They have won their games, even though they really faltered against Arizona State. They've done enough to get here. But I think those mistakes are going to be their downfall against Ohio State. The Buckeyes are typically just so consistent, and with all their talent, they're going to be able to put points on the board to be able to win this game. And Texas just goes through ruts in games of not getting anything done offensively. And I think those dry spells for them are going to be what do them. And so I'm picking Ohio State to win this game, to move on to the national championship and see an old classic Ohio State and Notre Dame matchup.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to go with you. Ohio State, my preseason pick to win it all. Just saying.
Yes.
Even though I switched up on them late, it's just the accumulation of what I thought it would be. They
Of course.
clearly had clearly had probably one of, or I would say the best roster. They did a really great job supplementing with the portal. Have a lot of seniors. I think there's this one stat. They only had one transfer to start on defense on that really good defense, and that was Caleb Downs, which probably one of the best safeties in the country, if
Mm.
not the best safety in the country, from Alabama, and just all around, just really good. I mean, they have Jeremiah Smith. There's so many weapons on offense. They have Quinshawn Judkins. They have Henderson. I mean, just an embarrassment of riches.
Mhm.
And they're starting to click. And ask Tennessee, ask Oregon. What does this team look like when they are on fire, when they're in, the zone, when they're clicking? It doesn't look good. Chip Kelly's been in his bag the last couple of games. They've finally figured out they can't just run inside zone against everyone and just show that they're tougher than you. And they're starting to dial up a lot of good plays. The offense is just so hard to handle. Just take out the defense. Just the offense by itself is a team to be reckoned with, and then add one of the best defenses in the country. So I think I'm taking Ohio State to win this. Texas will put up a good fight, but they have too many, instances where they've gone quiet, where they have so much talent, and somehow you're like, how did they get three and outs in a row? And that happens every game. Will it happen this game? Even if it doesn't, it'll still be a hard game to win for them. So I'm going to go Ohio State here as well.
There you have it. We are gonna still be evened up after these games, so it will come down to the national championship to see if we pick differently. But that's another episode of the Swampy Coliseum podcast. We'll have another one after these semifinal games, and then one, of course, after the national championship, wrapping up this whole season. But we're coming to the end, and a great season it's been once again. As always, you can follow us and watch or listen on YouTube, on Spotify, follow what's going on Instagram as well as we're posting on all those channels. And we're looking forward to watching a great game tomorrow night. So thanks for watching. As always, I am Andrew Hudson. That is Nathaniel Gilmore, and we'll talk to you next week.